Oh shit! A spy!
Hey guys, Mikoshi here. Today I'm going to be making a video on the strongest tornado shot in 3.22. This is my all-seeing Deadeye. I am not the maker of this genre of tornado shot, but I've been playing it and I've been having a blast with it. It's been a while I tried it out. This build is made for very big min-maxer and big spenders. It's stupidly expensive, so for most of the people who are gonna watch this video, it's probably gonna be just for enjoyment purposes and more content instead of, you know, I'm still gonna make a guide on it, but it's not suggested to budget player. Like, budget players cannot really run this, and low end mirror tier, you're probably off going with a normal tornado shot physical to cold conversion instead of this version. This version shines really when you put a lot of mirrors because it can scale even higher than normal tornado shots. And yeah, so for the people who want to spend big bucks, big mirrors, this video is for you. Now, first I'm gonna talk about why the strongest, what's the difference with this build and the other tornado shots, a build overview and explanation, and then I'm gonna try something different where I'm gonna have my POB open and I'm gonna go through the build with you guys to explain a bit why I chose what I chose, and let me know if you prefer that. Now, if you have any questions during the video, or you can always ask in the comments, and I usually try my best to answer all of them. We also have a Discord now, so if you want to join the Discord to ask questions, but also it's a quite cool community. We're 5,300, and well, now you know the league is kind of dying, but when the league starts, it's a very active Discord. There's, you know, item selling, build making, group play, all of that good stuff. So if you want to join, there's going to be the link in the description. Now, what makes something the strongest, right? It's not easy to decide what build is the strongest and what specific build is the strongest of those said builds. You know, you have to consider the defense, the DPS, quality of life, because a lot of builds are very strong, but you need to click like a million buttons, which kind of makes it annoying. So I still think that quality of life is very important for builds, because who really wants to play 9 million button builds? You know, you can say like, oh yeah, it's skills and skills, but not really. I prefer builds that just function properly and that don't feel janky to play, even if they're strong. Finally, there's going to be the min-maxing capabilities of that said build. Now, you could be the best build, for example, tanky builds. They're often going to be the best ones, are often going to be the ones who have high defense. For example, a tornado shot, the best tornado shot is not going to be the tankiest tornado shot. For us tornado shot players, the strength of our build is often going to be based upon our DPS. Now, you could easily make a build with tons and tons of DPS, but makes it like non-viable. For example, resistance, stuff like that. Example, if you have negative resistance and you only spec into DPS, it's not going to be a viable build. And so for me, the best tornado shot build would be the one with the highest amount of DPS, with the 100% crit chance being with power charge, without power charges, because I know you can go a ton of DPS without having yourself crit capped and then use power charges. The thing is, when you're playing, especially when you're bossing, when you're doing mana forge, it's not necessarily going to give you power charges all the time. Therefore, I think for DPS, it's going to be highest DPS without power charges. And for the defense, 100% ailment avoidance, 100% suppression cap, and positive chaos resistance, I was able to get up to 40%. I am still able to get over 4 billion DPS and having chaos resistance capped, but I was able to get to 4.7 with the 40% chaos resistance, and I think it's kind of worth it. The differences with other tornado shot in this build are not that big, right? We still use omniscience, heat shiver, and the physical to cold setup, and we scale the damage the same way. So the conversion, right? So increasing physical, the conversion, omniscience, frenzy, crit multi, and culling strike, stuff like that. That's all the same. It's just the build itself, like the items, are going to be constructed slightly different. And the two main pieces that are going to change are going to be the gloves and the chest. Now, on a normal tornado shot, we use the Hatred effect and non-curse auras as the implicit right over here with Exilarch and Eater, and they will greatly boost your DPS. After that, for higher end, you can go for the increased global defense if you want better defense, or you can go for the gain 10% of cold damage as extra chaos for that DPS boost. The rest will be quality of life and defensive side. For example, the mana reservation efficiency is often going to be always there. Maximum life, spell suppression, chaos resistance, and ailment avoidance. Those mods make a very well made chest. Now, the first thing you're going to notice when you're going to be looking at this new build is the body armor. It's completely different. We're going to be using a thing called Replica Shroud of the Lightless. It's a unique chest with 6 Abyssal Jewel sockets and no other mod, alright? It has the implicit maximum mana, which is going to change because we're going to try and double corrupt it for good double corruptions. But like in total, this armor has 0 mods and it just has 6 jewel sockets. Now, the chest we normally use on Tornado Shot is very, very strong. This means that for Replica Shroud of the Lightless to be worth it, you need to have extremely powerful Abyssal Jewels, and that's where the cost of this build is going to skyrocket. When making this build, you have to think about your Abyssal Jewels as your chest mods. For example, on your chest mods, you want flat life. This means you want flat life on your jewels, so that when you put them in your body armor, it basically becomes a flat life mod on your body armor. The best mods to go for this build are going to be crit multi and crit chance, but mostly crit multi because you're going to be crit capped, attack speed, flat damage, and life. The best ones, okay, are going to be those Ancient Strike Searching Eye Jewel. They are extremely powerful. They are mirror tier, however, so it's going to be expensive if you do the math right. Just on your chest, it's going to be 6 times mirror tier jewel, but they are very strong. In total, all 6 will give you a total of 24% global crit multi, 100% crit multi, 78% attack speed, 240 flat life, and 48 to 60 flat physical damage. So that's basically what your chest is going to give you thanks to the Abyssal Jewels. This is extremely powerful. Now, you do not need necessarily to have mirror tier jewels to be able to make this build a bit stronger in terms of DPS compared to a normal Tornado Shot. However, you're going to have to roll them extremely well, and it's going to take quite a while. Now, the next piece that changes are the gloves. As we know, the gloves convert 60% of our physical damage into cold damage, usually on normal Tornado Shot, and the rest is thanks to our cold mastery. That's why they're often going to be called the convert gloves, because they are the main source of conversion. Without the conversion, we lose a ton of DPS, but except that, the gloves are quite limiting. Some will use the gain 1 rage with on hit, example here, to give us rage, so you might use Berserk sometimes, but it's not enough to have a high uptime on Berserk. As well, some will go for the damage with hits against chilled enemies, attack speed, and damage during flask or during leeching, which is good, but it kind of stops there. You could even go for the inflict cold exposure implicit instead of the convert physical and then use a Watcher's Eye, but even then, anyone can feel how limiting their gloves can be. Now, before we get into our gloves, the most basic way to scale damage in Path of Exile is the first thing you are introduced to. It's going to be support gems. You're going to wake up washed up on the beach, you're going to kill that zombie, he's going to drop a gem, and then you're going to walk, and then you're going to see a big chest. The big chest will give you a support gem, and you will have to link it. And the main concern when leveling and making your build is to have 6 links, right? Without 6 links, your build is kind of bad. All mirror tier items, or bows especially, have all 6 links, and there's always going to be max sockets and max links, right? And that's the most basic knowledge in PoE. However, if we know that more links equals more damage, why do we stop at 6? The usage of additional links on item is not new. Sparks Spark builds and Righteous Fire builds have been using them for a long time. However, not many Tornado Shot players have done so. And in this build, we will use multi-link gloves to greatly boost our DPS. And when I mean greatly, I mean by a good 40%. So the many advantages of those gloves, which were made at this league thanks to locks, are, well, in order, the flat crit. As we know, Watcher's Eye can go up to 1.8%. It's a flat additional crit, which then gets multiplied by all your increases by crit. For example, if you have a 100% crit chance and you add 1.8, it's going to end up being 3.8. Now, that's a huge DPS boost for Watcher's Eye. However, those gloves will give you 3.5, which is basically the double. On top of that, it will then make your attacks have a 90% additional crit multi. That I don't really need to explain. That is absolutely nutty. I mean, that's a boost of 10%, 15, 20% DPS right there. And the gems that support your Tornado Shot are very strong as well. We have the level 25 faster attack, which at level 25 will give you a 49% increased attack speed. And the more you attack, the more you hit per second. The more you hit per second, the bigger your DPS is. On top of that, it will give you level 25 faster projectiles, which gives you a 73% faster projectile and a 32% increased damage at level 25. As we know, Tornado Shot, the secondary arrows are limited by time, which means you shoot your tornado, it explodes, and then it shoots secondary projectiles. These secondary projectiles have a time limit. If they don't travel as quickly, they won't travel big distances in that short amount of time. However, the faster they are, the longer they can go, and the range is going to be higher, which means for off-screen clearing, the faster your projectiles, the better the clearing. On top of that, if you pair the Bow Mastery, which scales damage with increases and decreases of projectile speed, this gives better clear and better damage. Now, it is also supported by a level 25 slower projectile. And there's a mistake there, but yeah, although that might be counterintuitive, slower projectile slows our projectiles, so with the mastery you would have reduced damage, but it increases our damage a ton. As you can see, it doesn't say increase projectile damage, it says more projectile damage. At level 25, it's 22% more damage. This means you take your DPS and you do times 1.22. So it's a multiplication of DPS, and that is very strong. On top of that, the faster projectile will overpower the slower projectile debuff. So in the end, you will have faster projectiles and huge amount of DPS on top. Now for the conversion questions, because we are not using the 60% physical damage to cold gloves and the 40%, we're gonna enter a problem of where do I have to find the last 60%. Now to reach the 100, there are the 40% physical from the tree, which is classic and it's never gonna change. Then 35 to 40%. The range is not 35 to 40, but you would need at least 35% from a Watcher's Eye, a mod right here. When you're affected by hatred, you will convert physical damage to cold. Go for 35 or 40, there is no difference in between both. And the last 25 to 20% are going to be a mod from or your gloves. You can ask when doing a Murphy to change it to 25%, or from the implicit of a quiver. In total, you will have either 100 or 105% conversion. The cap is 100. That's why I said at 35, you don't need to divine your Watcher's Eye to more. Now, the last thing that most players don't really use often is going to be Balance of Terror. Balance of Terror is OP, and it's actually usable in any type of build, like ever. And even if you're not playing this build, I still suggest you try to find out a way of putting Balance of Terror in your build. It is very, very strong, especially if you're going against bigger foes, right? When you're going to be mapping, you're not going to be thinking about Balance of Terror, you're just going to be shooting and killing stuff. but when you're going in front of bigger bosses, the buffs of Balance of Terror is very, very useful. What Balance of Terror is, it's a unique jewel that gives you bonuses if you've cast a curse in the past 10 seconds. For our build, we're gonna aim for the two mods that you can see here. 10% chance to deal double damage if you've cast vulnerability in the past 10 seconds, and gain 40% of physical damage as a random element if you've cast elemental weakness in the past 10 seconds. As we know, dealing double damage is a linear increase in DPS. So 10% chance to deal double damage is 10% more DPS. And the gain 40% of physical damage as random element is literally another hatred. That is unbelievably strong, unbelievably OP, and you should for sure use it. Now, what's really cool about this is you do not need to curse the enemy. All you have to do is to cast it. It's important to note that you need to cast it manually. So having auto curse will not function. I think it's with blasphemy support or something. That won't work, okay? So what you're going to do is you can curse an area and it will proc Balance of Terror. You do not have to hit an enemy. What's really cool about that is you don't need additional curse supports or like something that increases your curse cap, because our main curse or main mark is going to be Sniper's Mark, which is the strongest one. Now, if you are going for the min-maxing, you could go for the additional curse on Omniscience, which I think is very strong. Alright, this is going to be the segment of the POB analysis of the build. Let me know if you guys prefer this. I think it's quite cool because I'll be giving additional information on the POB, which you can find in the description of the video. Now, as you can see, this is the build as an overview. The bow is the Morbid Knock, the one that Sushi made. It's the standard physical bow. The quiver, it's as well the same thing as any physical to cold conversion tornado shot. Heat Shiver, the classic additional secondary projectile, 90% cost reservation in multi, and if you're able to, the +2 aura gems. For the ring, it's going to be the increase attribute, multi, frenzy, and then classic omni. I've seen a lot of players having the 7% increased dex, 7% increase int, 7% increase strength, because they think that going for higher omni is better. It is not. The best ones is really going to be the implicit, which is 1 increase in omni, 1 multi, and then 1 frenzy. And for the explicits, it's going to be 2 flat attributes and then multi. That's the best way for mirror tier. Those are the best rings for tornado shot in general. Calandra's Touch to make it doubled. Crystallized Omniscience, which is sovereignty, which is going to be very good because for mana, because we will not be using any enlightens on our build, so it's really important for mana reservation. As well, it gives higher effect. We have the additional curse, which is very good because we will be cursing with Sniper's Mark as well as elemental weakness. And the vulnerability, is going to be cast just to be cast for Balance of Terror. Hatred effect, 20% if you're able to. As we know, Hatred is one of the main sources of DPS, and scaling its aura effect is very strong. For Mage Blood, increase accuracy while you have Onslaught. You will permanently have Onslaught thanks to the Silver Flask, so that's really good. There are ways of gaining Onslaught. For example, Unveil Boots have a chance of gaining Onslaught on kill. However, it's important to note that Onslaught does scale with Flask effect on a Silver Flask. So your Onslaught on your Silver Flask is actually going to be stronger than the Onslaught you gain if you gain Onslaught on hit or on kill. We will have Critical Strike Multiplier during any Flask effect, which is all the time because we have Mage Blood and we have Hatred effect, pretty classic. For your Flask, I went for the Quartz to have permanent phasing and suppression, which helps me get the suppression to 100%. The Amethyst Flask is very good for getting that chaos resistance. Taste of Hate, I use the 70% increased effect because when you're mapping, you're never going to need to use it because it's just so strong. And when you're bossing, just popping it, you're going to have time to kill the boss 10 times by the time the Flask effect ends. So that's why I had the increased effect. The classic Diamond Flask for the crit And then I went for the 40% additional elemental resistance because, you know, you want that capped at all times. Now, as you can see, there is no quick silver flask. When you're mapping, I suggest you actually swap Taste of Hate. I would go for the 70% increased effect with Quicksilver and then run a automatic Alchemy Silver Flask. That will, just a normal Silver Flask that is up because you're always going to be killing things. On the Quicksilver, have the 25% reduced mana cost, so you have that at all times, and then the automatic flask, you can go for the attack speed maybe, and it would automatically do it. Now, the main sauce is going to be Replica Shroud of the Lightless. I went for the double corrupt, the 50% increased damage, and then 50% reduced extra damage taken from critical strike. It is completely not needed, and that's pure min-maxing. If there's something you should min-max at the end, it's probably this one. But if you can, get that one. As you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in total. It's 7 Abyssal Jewels, 6 on the Replica, and then 1 is, I think, in the tree somewhere. Yeah, in the tree over here. Those, as we've seen, they give you a ton of multi, a ton of flat damage, flat life, and attack speed. As you can see, the life on this character is it's not bad, to be honest. It's 2,700. And considered it's often, when you reach billions of DPS, glass cannon type of genre, you're often not even going to see builds above 2,200. So having 2,700 can make it quite a comfortable experience, right? It has 10,000 EHP, which is low in general, but considering it's not using, you know, Berserk and other cheats to make your EHP seem bigger, it's quite good. As well, as you can see, the spell suppression is at 100%, and our avoidance is also at 100%. Now, for the gems, we are using Tornado Shot, the Divergent for speed, Awakened Vicious Projectile. I've had some questions about Vicious Projectile. Why do we use it? It's because it gives you increase physical damage. Basically, it's very, very strong, and it's probably one of the gems that gives you the highest amount of DPS. Awaken elemental damage with attacks, which is very good. Also, it permits you to run reflect maps once you reach level 5. I think that's kind of bugged right now though, but yeah, it will help you. Now, I use Trinity afterwards. You could go for crit multi, so more crit damage, but Trinity in terms of gem is going to give you a higher amount of damage. Now, we are running 100% cold damage, so how do we proc Trinity? We're going to be able to proc Trinity when we have Heat Shiver, because Heat Shiver will give you 100% of your cold damage as fire damage. So with 2 types of elemental damage, you're able to proc Trinity completely, and that's how we use it. Now for mapping, Trinity is only going to proc for 2 elements and not all 3, but it is still very, very strong. But when you're going to be bossing, Trinity is going to proc immediately because you're attacking so quickly, and yeah, you're just going to feel great, man. Now for the tree. Tree is going to be pretty classic. I'm going to go by order of like how I spec. Now you come out of here. For the tattoos, you went for increased effective marks because it's pure DPS. If you're a pure mapper, go for projectile speed. It's going to be better. Here we go. Aura on your skills have 10% increased effect on you. The normal mana reservation efficiency. Then you go for Thread of Hope. If you're able to get the corrupted blood, cannot be inflicted. We go here for mana reservation because we're quite tight on mana reservation. We're at 3%. Here, accuracy, you know, normal stuff. These ones, these nodes are very strong because they also give you the double damage. For example, this one, the 5% double damage. Physical damage here, elemental penetration, the classic stuff. We went for life afterwards because it's quite useful. After that, as well, almost forgot, here I put the Ramako Makanga for the additional projectile. I took here, which is kind of useless, the damage over time multi, but after that is quite good because we have gain 5 life per enemy hit with attack, which is very, very good considering we are shooting 11 arrows 11 times per second, which gives 4 secondary projectiles. We're going to be shooting everything at the same time, so this is actually very, very good. As well, we have 0.4% damage, leech does life, so very, very strong. We continue with the increased effect of marks, and we get to this point. I also went for the additional arrow. Make sure to tattoo this node. You can tattoo it with anything that is not bad for your build. So you can go for the Mage Bin, which is quite good. You can go for, Ghost Dance, Pain Attunement, like stuff that do not impact your build. Now here, one difference with normal Tornado Shot is we went for the voices, which gives 3 jewels. The reason I did that is because, points were quite limited, and as well, we like our Abyssal Jewels. That's pretty much it. We then continue down with Multi-Shot, which gives us an additional arrow, as well as the double damage with Lethal Pride. Here, pretty classic, suppressed damage, 5% increased strength. That's pretty good, thanks to Lethal Pride again. Then we come down here. This is the classic +1 tattoo area. I'm pretty sure everybody knows this. You put the tattoo here because you're gonna branch out on all of those anyways. Here is the crit tattoo, wheel, which gives you a huge ton of DPS, and then you can get the bow mastery, which gives you increases and reductions to projectile speed, also applied to damage with bows. As you can see, this gives a whopping 15% DPS, which is very strong. Now here, it's accuracy to get ourselves accuracy capped, crit multi against unique enemies, frenzy charge, which is very strong, and we have our Lethal Pride. Lethal Pride, try to spec the most amount of deal double damage. It is the best mod on Lethal Pride. After that, it's gonna be physical and then increase in strength. Don't forget, you can tattoo this little passive. I see a lot of people often forget, but this is tattooable. After that, down here, we get the Cold Mastery for the physical, as well as the gain 10% physical as extra. It gives us 1% life regen with a good lethal, which is great. Here we have Suppress, Evasion rating, life, and double damage, which is very strong. We get more life, because you don't want to be too much of a glass cannon. Here we come down here, we have Mana Leech because we have to use 6 mana per shot, so that's basically 66 mana per second. We regenerate only 36 of them, 36 mana per second. However, with Mana Leech, we're able to have 135, which is above 65, so we're able to spam our Tornado Shot, and as long as we're hitting, we're good. Now you could drop a bit of DPS, like for example here, we're still above the 4 billion, and go for the 10% Mana Leech is instant. That's going to be very strong for the mana, but as well for the life leech that we have right here. And that's just going to end up being what you prefer. Alright, let me put that up real quick again. Alright, now if we go down, we're going to go for the multi place. Pretty classic. After that, we go for the Omniscience, the attribute dexterity wheel, which is very good for Omniscience. And we also gonna run another additional projectile tattoo. We're gonna go up here anyways for suppression. Here it's very strong, the projectile damage. The further you shoot, the stronger it gets. A bit of life. And we're basically only wasting 1 point, which is the dual wield critical strike chance, for an additional arrow, which is a very good deal for me. Then finally you have the classic 12 passive cluster. You do not need a mirrored cluster. It is useless because the triple implicit, the synthesized implicit you see here, the increased cold damage, the multi, and the projectile speed, only affects the actual jewel. It does not affect the small passives. So the small passives do not have the 3 implicits. That means, as you can see, it is only a 1.3% DPS increase. So for a mirror, is it worth it? Absolutely not. Now for the mods we used, because I went full on DPS, I went attack speed, damage, int, or any type of attribute for Omniscience, and then 35% increased effect. You could change the damage or the int for life and chaos, which is what I run on my normal build. So you have even more life, which is, when you do the math, 10 life times 10, so 100 plus the 35% increased effect, that's 135% plus flat life, and you have a lot of chaos res, you will be capped on chaos, and you will probably have 2,900, maybe 3,000 life. Your DPS will go down a bit, but in my opinion, it is worth it. For the medium clusters, we went full DPS clusters because we are crit capped. We are crit capped without power charges. And so I went for the repeater and eye to eye. I had questions about eye to eye and why do I use eye to eye? Because one of the mods says you deal 35% increased damage with hits against nearby enemies. Because we are using far shot, of which I'm going to go to a bit later, we are losing damage when we're close, right? And it's going to happen that monsters are going to be close to us. Maybe they spawn there, maybe we teleport into their face. We still want to have good enough amount of damage to kill them quickly enough so they're not dangerous to us. If we take too much time to kill enemies that are in front of us, they have chances of hitting us and potentially killing us or taking off a big chunk of our HP. Now, for the Ascendency, classic far shot, which is absolutely crazy. It's a 60% more damage. Endless munition, which is plus 2 additional projectiles. Because we shoot 11 projectiles, that is basically 18% more damage. Gathering Winds, which gives us Tailwind, which increases our action speed by 8%. And for every Gale Force that you have, which is up to 10 of them, you have 15% increase effect of Tailwind. So 150% increase of Tailwind, which ends up being, to be honest, I don't even know. It's like 20% or something. Maybe I did the math wrong, but it's just more action speed and it's a lot of DPS. As you can see, that's 16% of our DPS. Then we go for Focal Point, which makes the Sniper's Mark even stronger. And as we know, Sniper's Mark is extremely, extremely strong. Now, for the Forbidden Flame, Forbidden Flesh, there are multiple options. You could go for the Nature's Boon, which gives you 30% increased effect of magic utility and could make you faster if you want a map, but I think there are better options. I went for the Avatar of the Veil for many reasons. First of all, it gives you a 50% chance to avoid ailments while you're phasing. You are permanently phasing thanks to our flask right here, as you can see. Well, it doesn't say it, sorry, but if we go here, it gives suppress as well as permanent phasing thanks to our Mage Blood. That means we already have 50% avoidance done. Then, thanks to our boots, the 29%, and then the additional avoid 35, we are 100% avoid. Now, on top of that, it gives nearby enemies fire, cold, and lightning exposure while you have phasing, which you always have, and it applies minus 20 to them. That means the exact range, I might write on the video, so like it won't be written here, but it might pop up on the video, is, you know, if you're going to go far shot and stay very far away, it might not give you that 9% DPS, but the fact that you have 50% of the avoidance already is such a good quality of life boost. Now, if you did not want to go Avatar of the Veil and you want to go for the classic Avatar of the Slaughter or the Avatar of the Chase, which gives 100% increased effective onslaught, which is absolutely nutty, you could go for boots that have avoid being shocked. You can go up to 100% thanks to your boots, I'm pretty sure, in one shot, right? So with the implicit and the explicit, and replace one of your one of those jewels for the Storm Shroud, which what it does is basically the chances to avoid being shocked will also apply to other ailments, and you will be 100% capped, and you will have the 100% effect of Avatar of the Chase. Now that seems to be about it. For the configuration, it's pretty normal. I went for power charge you don't need. Frenzy charge is going to be very easy when you're playing. For example, if you're playing with mapping, I suggest the normal Blood Rage. It will generate enough. The normal Blood Rage, will give you a chance of gaining Frenzy charge on kill, the 25% chance. And for bossing, I suggest you go for the Anomalous, which gives you a 2% chance to gain a Frenzy charge when you hit a unique enemies. Considering you're doing 100 plus arrows per second, you're going to be hitting those enemies quite a lot. and you will be having frenzy charges very easily. Gale Force is going to be 10. In 1 second, basically, you are at 10 Gale Force, so basically at all times. Onslaught, well, we don't have to check it out because we already have Flask. We are phasing as well. We have Tailwind as well. We have Flask active. We will crit recently because we always crit, and thanks to that, it will give us the bonus of the 8% attack speed if you've dealt a critical strike recently. Do that times 7. That's 56% increased attack speed. That's huge. As you can see here, our attack speed is quite big, and it's quite a big amount of DPS. Projectile travel distance is 70. It is very easy to shoot something at 70%, 70 projectile. If your character's in the middle, it's going to be around here. Just shoot just a bit behind him, and you will have the 70 distance quite easily. Chill effect 30% classic, and then frozen for the heat shiver for the 100% chance to gain the 100% cold damage as extra. We will always freeze enemies because critical strikes have a 100% chance of freezing enemies, which means we will be able to proc Trinity, which will have 50. It's a huge amount of DPS. As you can see here, we're at 4.3. Without Trinity, we're at 3 billion. It is a very, very strong and very, very low-key gem to use on physical to cold, but if you're running Heat Shiver, Trinity is the best supporting gem. Talking about supporting gems, let's talk about the gems that we are using. For the auras, we're going to be running Hatred, pretty normal. The quality, not really important, but if you want, you can go for the 10% increased chill effect and freeze duration. Herald of Purity, which increases your physical damage. Anomalous, I like Anomalous because it has the minions have a 10% chance of taunting on hit, which kind of makes mobs attack your minions instead of you, which could be a good quality of life and good survivability. Precision, very basic. Critical strike chance, accuracy rating. We go for the Divergent for the increased damage for the 2%. It's not a lot, but it's worth it. And then finally Haste, the Divergent Haste for the 4% increased projectile speed. That also is like 0.9% increased damage, but it's quite good. You could also go for the Val one, which you can pop, which is an additional bonus when you're mapping. On the boots, we went for the Manaforge Arrow with Frenzy. Frenzy, we don't really need Frenzy generation, but it's an extra for free. As well, we went the Culling Strike support. Culling Strike, what it does is it instantly kills an enemy if it has 10% maximum life or lower, even if it's 1 damage. So, example, the enemy has 10 billion life and he has 1 billion life remaining, right? So 10%, and you deal 1 damage, he will instantly die no matter what, even for phases. Then we use vulnerability. We will not use vulnerability on minions or on enemies, sorry. We're just gonna curse vulnerability for us to have the bonuses of Balance of Terror, which will give us a 10% chance to deal double damage. For the curse and other support, we have Awaken Enhance, which increases the quality of gems. That's very good with Sniper's Mark, because Sniper's Mark, the quality, will give us a 5% increased damage taken from projectile hits, and we literally have another 7%, so it's 12% thanks to Awaken Enhance. Mark on hit, which will automate the Sniper's Mark. Blood Rage, which is very strong for attack speed, as well as the chances of getting frenzy charges. With Awaken Enhance, it's going to go up to 5%. And Elemental Weakness, if we're able to, with Omniscience, to have the additional curse, it's the way to go. You could go for the curse duration or increased duration of elements on cursed enemies, or you could just, or the increased effect of curse. I go for the increased effect of curse because why not? We then use Inspiration support with the Anomalous, the Divergent, to reduce the mana cost of that. So when you're automating Sniper's Mark, you don't want to have not enough mana to use Sniper's Mark, because we're going to be using 65 mana per second. So using Inspiration will help you have permanent uptime on those little things. Now, for the main skill, we're going to go for the Tornado Shot, Awaken Vicious Projectile, Awaken Elemental Damage, and Trinity. That's a classic. Now, I am aware that I do not have a movement skill right now. That's because most of the time I just instantly kill everything. If you prefer, you could either drop Blood Rage, or you could drop the Vulnerability to be able to run a movement skill. For me, when I'm bossing, I literally just completely drop the Mana Forge setup. I know it's a 10% increased damage, but I prefer running the Mirror Arrow and Blink Arrow combo. I made a 1-minute video on how strong that is because it makes big enemies permanently aggro on minions and never you. As well, you have literally teleportation, and you can use it 5 times before a cooldown recovery if you have the right setup. That pretty much wraps up the video. This segment, please let me know if you guys prefer this. And yeah, that's about it. So I know this video is for mirror tier and multiple mirrors. I think this build is like in the 15 or like 10s. It's in the 10s to 15 mirrors. You're able to do it for lower. I think it's possible at 5 or 6. But I know most players will not reach this in this league, or probably never. So it was just more of showing how Tornado Shot can actually scale even more. Because, you know, I made the video on the billion of DPS video, but that was kind of like the classic Tornado Shot, and it didn't really bring any changes to Tornado Shot. This, I hope, will maybe change ways of how you could think about Tornado Shot and how people think about Tornado Shot, how high it can scale.